Okay.
Everyone good? Yeah. Can you start off with telling us your name and spelling it out?
Yes, so my name is Ortavia Simon. It's spelled O-R-T-A-V as in Victor, I-A. Last name Simon, S-I-M-O-N.
And then talk to us about the lawsuit.
So today we filed, my law firm, Simon Law Group, we filed a lawsuit on behalf of my client, Ms. Rakita Davis, for the incident that occurred on April 28th, 2024 here at the Cabana Live. As you all know, that there was a shooting that involved my client along with 9 others who were shot by some individual who pulled out a firearm and exchanged gunfire in the Cabana Live. You know, our investigation has led us to believe that obviously this event was not permanent. It was not an event that should have taken place here without the proper steps being taken. And of course, we believe that, of course, this event, well, the incident involving my client and the 9 other individuals could have been avoided, but for the folks here at Cabana Live, along with several other entities that we've named in the lawsuit, doing what they were supposed to do to make sure that they were protecting patrons like my client who were visiting this particular establishment.
What they have done to make sure that she was safe and the other 9 were safe?
So whenever we do inadequate security or negligent security lawsuits, our steps for these lawsuits is we explore, hire experts, and those experts will look at the facts and they will look at the evidence in this case and make a determination as to what measures were employed here in order to make sure that the individuals who were participating in this event as patrons were in fact safe. And you know, from my experience in these cases, based off of the testimony and the evidence that we will eventually discover, those individuals will testify about, even the folks here at Cabana Live and the other individuals that are named will testify about those measures that they implemented, and then we will hire experts who will look at whether or not those measures were sufficient, considering the number of individuals who were here for this event, considering the size of the venue, considering the measures that were taken to, of course, make sure that guards, for instance, were trained properly, and that folks that were here were safe.
I mean, it was a security guard that ultimately did take this gentleman down and get the gun away from him. What other security measures could have been in place? Are you thinking of metal detectors or security with guns or?
Well, so with respect to security guards, a security guard being present in of itself is not necessarily enough of a measure to make sure that people are in fact safe. If, for instance, the security guards are not adequately trained, if they're not, for instance, adequately trained to make sure that they are confirming whether or not folks who are coming into this facility are coming in here with weapons, or if they are coming in here, with the intent to cause some commotion or some trouble. I'd like to make a very important distinction here. Not only was this an incident that could have been deterred and probably even prevented, this is an incident that involved a 16-year-old child in an establishment where there is alcohol being served. Let's be clear, there should not have been a child in there in the first place, and the actor, right, you all have seen from the sheriff's office reports in news interviews that the actor, at least that law enforcement believes may have instigated or at least started firing the firearm first, was in fact a minor that should not have been in this establishment in the first place. So, you know, when we talk about what actions or what measures law enforcement or at least security could have done to prevent this, it's simple. Make sure that you're IDing the individuals, basic level measures that are typically implemented. Make sure that the folks that are coming in don't have weapons on them, that there are pat downs, that they're being wanded. And again, you know, we will discover more as this goes forward what measures were in fact implemented and what could have been done to, you know, perhaps deter this from happening and causing more injury.
The lawsuit also mentions like holes in the fence. Can you talk about that?
Well, so when we file the lawsuits, you know, typically what we do is we mention various different facts that we anticipate might in fact come into play. It's not necessarily a fact that we expect will eventually lead to why a crime might have occurred or why it did not occur. But, again, when we name these facts in the lawsuit initially, they're named with the intention of making sure that we have covered our grounds. And again, there may be facts, for instance, or steps that do not necessarily take place, or facts that may not necessarily manifest as to being the cause for the crime or the incident occurring at the particular property. But again, through the discovery process, we determine whether or not there are measures that could have been implemented, whether there are things that were done or insufficiencies on the property that could have otherwise prevented this individual from coming into this establishment.
We can hear the music coming from the Havana Live right now. And just days ago, your client was shot. How do you feel hearing that they're going on, their business is going on as normal? And how does your client feel?
Well, I mean, I think, for me, I understand that businesses intend to make money, right? And obviously, this is another instance where, it's not unusual where in these type of cases where we see businesses will put the profits over people. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what happened here, but this is a perfect example of how business as usual, when there are lives like my clients that have been affected in the long term by the inadequacies or the inadequate measures that have been implemented by these particular facilities and their entities.
What's the end goal with the lawsuit? I think you're seeking more than $100,000 in damages. Is that right?
Right. So what happens is whenever we file a lawsuit, there are jurisdictional amounts that have to be alleged in order to trigger the jurisdiction of the court. So when we allege a dollar amount in a lawsuit, just as I mentioned just a moment ago about the facts, or deficiencies on the property, those don't necessarily mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is the dollar amount that my client is in fact seeking. We of course reserve the right to seek more than just those dollars amount, but that triggers the jurisdiction of the appropriate court.
So at the minimum, 100,000
Well,
or 50,000.
well, I don't want to say what a dollar amount would be, because obviously a dollar amount in terms of damages from any lawsuit depends on the economic damages that my client has sustained, which would include medical bills, lost wages, other, things that we can quantify. And then, of course, there are the non-economic damages, the pain, the suffering, the loss of consortium, the things that my client, will experience in the long term, future pain and suffering, things that we cannot necessarily quantify today, but that based off of those pain and the suffering that she's experienced, she will, of course, be compensated for, which, of course, could exceed whatever dollar amount is named in the lawsuit.
I spoke to one of, I don't know if Rakita Davis is going to speak at all.
Yeah, Miss Davis will take a few questions eventually as well. She is in a little pain, well, not a little pain, a lot of pain, so she will try to take some questions as well.
Just before we transition to that, my last question, I spoke to an employee at the Havana Live who says they don't have regular security when there's not a private event, and they don't know if they'll get security in the future. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that goes, again, to the core of the issues in this case. Let's be very clear. They were not supposed to have, this establishment has a food and a beverage license through the Department of Business and Regulation. They do not have a license to allow people or third parties to utilize this venue as a venue space. It is for their food and their beverage license, and that is exactly the problem. There should not have been a party here without it being permitted properly, and considering the fact that they did not have the proper licensure and authority to hold such an event by a third party in the first place. So my goal is, whenever there is a third party event, that they make sure that the third parties have the appropriate measures for security in place. And let's just also add, any of these entities can pull crime grids, and they can look at crime in the area and the vicinity of this premises, and everybody's on constructive notice in terms of what the crime is like in the Sanford area, at least in the 2-mile radius for any period of time. And what I think anyone will probably find, if you did actually do the research, is that there have been, a number of calls to this area, a number of calls to this establishment for crimes against persons, And the bottom line is they have to do more, especially when they know that people's lives are at danger. You know, we don't want people coming to establishment and have the risk of losing their lives, because this incident could have been way more tragic. 10 people being shot in an establishment, what we would typically call a mass shooting, you know, albeit whether it was intended to those people or not, but 10 people in an establishment being shot could have been much more tragic than what we experienced here.
Is it this one?
Or maybe if that thing goes down, the tripod goes out.
It won't. Well, what do you guys think?
Catch it.
Put it
You
on
wanna
the side?
move it over?
Yeah. Sorry, Ricky. Let me see. I don't want to hit you. Is that okay, guys? What's the best thing?
So the best thing we can ask you to do is to try to speak. All right.
I'm gonna put the mic on her. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I mean, unless you guys just want to grab the mics.
Oh, yeah.
You want to just do
You
that?
want to do that?
Yeah, since we're not going to show your face anyway, it's nice to just be easier. Yeah. Maybe we can like pick a side or something.
Try to get as close to you as you
Yeah.
can. Still showing the parts. So hands and feet are okay. Just
Oh, let me grab it. Ray, you've got your glove on. That's right. He's got it.
Oh, you have the live.
Thank you. Thank you. No worries.
Miss Davis, is everybody ready?
Good. Can you tell us your name and spell it out for us?
It's Rakita Davis, RIKITADAVIS.
How are you feeling tonight? I know you're in a lot of pain, it looks like.
Yes, I am.
Walk us through what happened that night. What was going on? What did you hear or see?
I came with my brother. We wasn't here for like 30 minutes. Once we came in, we went to the bar. We hung out there at the bar for a little while. Then we heard a lot of people going out there fighting. They fighting. We looked over. We seen 2 dudes fighting. After we seen them fighting, I went to heading towards the exit way. And as we was walking towards the exit, I just heard gunshots and pain in my feet, and I just fell to the floor. I knew to just get up and go to my brother and just find the ambulance, or they just took me to the hospital.
What can you tell us the extent of your injuries?
It went through my ankle. It hit my Achilles bone. I had to have 2 screws
How long were you in the hospital?
for like 3 days.
Did they decide or figure out how many times you were shot?
It was just once.
Just once?
hmm
And did they say how long it would take for you to recover and get back to a sense of normalcy?
Like 3 months.
So how does that affect your life, your day-to-day life?
A lot. I can't work. I can't tend to my kids. I can barely bathe. I can barely do anything for myself.
How many kids you said you had